Welcome everyone to my YouTube channel. My name is Yvonne Maragh and I have extensive experience in internal audit, risk and controls, and finance. I'm a chartered accountant and a certified internal auditor. I have internal audit experience at the senior management level in 3 major organizations, which include the setting up of internal audit departments, standardizing documentation for internal audit departments, fraud reduction, fraud investigations, process controls improvement, inclusive of process documentation, and a wealth of experience at the Board Audit Committee level. I also consult in finance, especially in areas where there is some difficulty in meeting the requirements of both external and internal audits. Hi everyone, today we're going to look at how we should prepare responses to audit findings for both internal and external audits. This may seem like a very straightforward action, but I have seen where management in many instances are not very clear on the requirements and many times take the wrong approach, which can lead to a breakdown in the relationship between the auditor and the auditee, which sometimes result in audit findings taking years to be closed. The first point I would like to make is that the work of an auditor and the value audits generate is seen over time as controls are improved and the systems become more efficient. This many times includes the reduction of fraud, which is seen in the bottom line, and an increase in profits. The value audits generate is usually not seen or appreciated until over time as controls are improved and the processes become more efficient. This can lead to, for example, a reduction in waste, hence increase in profits. Internal auditing helps organizations achieve the strategic, operational, financial, and compliance objectives through controls improvement. Where an organization has documented procedures, these are to be updated after each audit where process controls are improved if not previously documented. The work of audit can also improve the well-being of employees where issues are addressed which result in the improvement in transparency, such as is seen in payroll audits or staff appraisal, performance incentive audits, or even audits which confirm that additional staff is required in order to meet the objectives of the organization. Improved controls will assist in lowering risks, inclusive of incidents of fraud, especially with a rigorous spot or surprise check system. It is important for the auditee to understand that the work of the auditor is to help the organization. Once mutual respect is established between auditors and auditees, the matter of audit reports can become less emotionally stressful on the auditee. It is important for audit reports to be seen as fair and truly independent. If the auditee feels that the auditor has intentionally made the situation look worse than it actually is, then trust is broken down and the auditor could possibly have a more difficult time getting information from the auditee, inclusive of open discussions. We call this the auditee stonewalling the auditor. Many times I've seen where some auditors intentionally leave out, like this is where I have gone to organizations to help to clear up outstanding audit points, and I've seen where the auditor intentionally left out some information to make the auditee look worse and make the situation look worse than it actually is. And when that happens, the auditee will just not respond to the audit points because they feel like the auditor is in control, especially in organizations where the auditor has the last word. So we have to be very careful, not because you're in a position of some sort of power, that means you must take advantage of it, or you're trying to make your audit report look stronger than it actually is. Or it is good when you go into an organization and if you've been there for a while and then you audit an area and you don't have many audit points, that means you are doing your job. It doesn't mean that every time you go every time you go you see the same points over and over at the same level, high risk level, then that means your job is not being, as an auditor, is not as effective as it should be. It might not be your fault. But what I'm saying is, when it gets better, like for example, when the management comments from the external audit, if you're an internal auditor, when the management comments gets better, you, the internal auditor, will look better and will be even appreciated by the management staff. I've been in internal audit meetings where the internal auditors have been applauded for the good work they're doing because the controls have improved so significantly. So that's a good thing too. And in that, your appraisal will also improve. So you'll get a better bonus if you're in a bonus paying organization. So it is not a bad thing if the audit points from year to year, you might still have them up, but they are not at the high risk level, maybe medium risk or low risk. Okay, so we're going straight now into how you respond to audit points. Okay, our first example on bank reconciliations. This is one of the most common audit points you'll find in both external audit and internal audit. So the APC ministry policy states that all bank reconciliations are to be prepared and signed as approved and dated by the accounts manager within 30 days after the end of the month. In addition, all reconciling items are to be investigated and clear before approval of the reconciliation. This might not be the exact thing in your organization. This is just a case I'm making up, right? So your thing, sometimes most companies are like within 5 days or so the bank reconciliations have to be prepared, and you'd still be expecting to see reconciling items. So I'm quite aware of that. Okay, for XYZ bank account number 123456 as at August 31, 2022, the most recent bank reconciliations seen were those for January 2022. The reconciliations are not being signed as approved by the accounts manager. So I'm going to give you a number of possible management response. So it's just because these are what I have seen, and I'm going to go through each one and tell you what is lacking and what is the best one and what you should do and not do. Okay, first, this is example number 1. First, we would like to thank the auditors for all the work carried out in this review. We are in agreement with the auditors and will ensure that bank reconciliations are prepared on a timely basis. In your opinion, what do you think of this response? What would you add or take away from this? So let's move on. In my opinion, this is a very weak response. No effort was put into it. It's not specific. No timelines were given as to when you're expecting to prepare them and have them ready for the auditors to come back and have a look at them. The names of the persons and title responsible for delivering them was not given. A process owner makes it easier for the auditor to follow up so they can know exactly who is the process owner is. So if you have the financial controller, they might not have the time to be following up on all the individual items. So it's good for them to give maybe the person who's in charge, the supervisor who's in charge of bank reconciliations, or the chief accountant who is in charge. So it's good to give the name of a specific name of the person in charge of that area. No reasons were given why the reconciliations are late. Has the person responding mentally resigned from the job? Because this just sounds like a very offhanded response. Do they need guidance on how to prepare a response, which is what we are doing now? Example number 2 of what a response could look like. The auditors, and I've seen this so many times, the auditors need to realize that our department is short-staffed and that we are trying our best to produce the required documents with our lack of proper systems and exhausted workforce. We have not been able to go on vacation for the past 2 years, and the staff is very restive and unhappy. You definitely do not want to give a response like this. It is too defensive, it is too emotional, it is unprofessional. They have not acknowledged and accepted the audit finding, and they have not stated a corrective plan. This is example 3. We are aware that our bank reconciliations have not been meeting the required timeline since July of 2021, and we are trying our best to get it back to where it should be as outlined below. So this is acknowledging it, and you've accepted it, and now you're going to tell them what you're going to be doing. We are currently in the process of implementing a new accounting system. The expected implementation date was November 2021. However, this timeline was not met, and the contract of the key MIS person on the project did not get the contract renewed until April 2022. They are now back, and the new implementation date is August 2022. This delay tied up two of our main accounting personnel, including the bank reconciliation supervisor, who were on the project full-time. We have taken on an accounting consultant since the audit was carried out to assist with the preparation of the reconciliations, and we are now up to April 2022 and should be current by October 2022. We have cleared up 80% of the reconciling items, and the remaining 20% will require board approval for write-off at the next board meeting on August 15, 2022. The accounts manager has now signed as approved all the completed bank reconciliation and will sign the others once completed. All bank reconciliations are available for your inspection once completed, and we will accommodate you at a mutually convenient time. We have also added the bank reconciliation in the month-end closing checklist, which the CFO signs off on. This will make her aware of any issues early in order to have them treated with priority and addressed. And here you would give the key contact process owner, the name, the title, and the estimated completion date. What do we have now in our new response? Acknowledgement of the breakdown in controls, confirmation that the finding is correct, an explanation of the root cause of the audit finding, the corrective action being taken to address the issue, a show of commitment and that you are serious about implementing the required controls, explanation of the action taken, and if there are any additional actions to be taken, names and title of the key contacts, a date to which you are committed to close the issue, inviting the auditor to come in and follow up to confirm the work carried out and the closing of the issue. Okay, so we will move on to the next slide. Disagreeing with an audit finding. Yes, you can disagree with an audit finding if you think the information that the auditor has written is incorrect, but there is a proper way to go about it. So here is an example of how you would respond to an audit finding where you're disagreeing with what they have stated. We were informed on May 1, 2022 that an audit was going to be carried out of the accounts payable system starting May 8, 2022. We were told the audit could not be postponed. We had just moved offices 2 weeks previously, and many of the files were not yet unpacked. We have located 5 of the 10 requested files to date as we are unpacking in alphabetical order and unpacking as we file because there's no space to store unpacked files outside of the filing cabinets. The audit was completed on May 31, 2022. We should be able to locate all the remaining files by July 12, 2022, and we are open to another visit by the auditors then. So it is important for you to give them a date when they can return. So you see in this instance, the auditors had not given enough notice, just 1 week notice, especially for an accounts department which were in the process of moving. So more than likely they would have said they did not receive the information and the files were not available and did not state the reasons. So this is where I'm saying sometimes the auditors will leave out information from the audit findings, which would, if they had put in that information, then the auditee would not have looked as bad as a report which is not including some of the relevant information which any fair person would have included. Okay, in this example, I'm not calling specific words because I don't want the video to be flagged in any way, so I'm going to use a different word in terms of the outbreak, but you will understand what it is I'm speaking about. The audit was carried out on December 1 to 7, 2021, 2 weeks after most of the staff had returned to work after a K outbreak in the payroll department. We were in the middle of calculating the performance incentives to meet the payroll deadline for December 2021. We had requested a later date for the audit to be carried out, but our request was not granted. We will ensure the documents outstanding and reports requested are available at your next visit on February 22, 2023. So as you can see, it was not a very convenient time, as we as auditors should always know when is a good time to visit. If it is not a fraud investigation, if it is not a spot check, you must always know when is the correct time. There are some companies like December is their busiest time and their staff will not be available, especially if they have to finish up their year-end accounts too for the external audit, which is to start the next year. So internal audit in this instance should be aware of things like that. If the external auditors are coming in, then you should know which areas is more convenient at that time to audit. Or maybe you go and audit HR, or you go on the plant if there's a plant involved, like a production plant, or it's that those times you don't go into accounts and delay them preparing their information. As I said, unless it's a routine audit which is expected at that time, unless it's something like, for example, you're involved in the checking back of information so that for the accuracy of the bonus payment, so that bonus can be paid, things like that. But do not go for certain routine checks which are not really critical, or you don't really have to at that time, which is why it is important to consider all these things in your audit plan, which I will do at another date in how you prepare your audit plan. So here I'm going to give you some other tips in preparing an audit response. I have seen where there have been very detailed audit reports with many points, maybe over 10 points, and the auditee has responded in just one document in like the form of an essay, and they're not usually in the order of the audit points, and they have not said audit point number 1, audit point number 2, audit point number 3. They just wrote everything like an essay. So it's difficult now you have to go in, and which I have done in some of the work that I have done in terms of trying to ensure that the findings, each finding has an appropriate response. I had to go through some of these essay-like responses and extract out of all of them where I think they were responding to which point, and then after I've done all the extractions, I go back to each audit point and see if anything is outstanding or has not been addressed by the auditee. So ensure that you write your responses in like a point format by audit point, and if you have to break down even further into subpoints, then you also do this. If you decide to write in the essay format, you will more than likely miss responding to some finding, especially if you have not been responding to the findings in the same format that the report was written in, like 1, 2, 3, 4, but you have gone 1, 9, 10, you go back to 3, you go back to 2, you go back to 11, that sort of thing. Also, the auditor should also be listing the findings with numbers, reference numbers for each finding, and also break down if these findings in categories like 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, 2.1, 2.2, 2.3. So it's easier when you break it down. It's not as overwhelming for the auditee to respond, because they can just respond to one point at a time and will not be thinking of the whole thing. You have to remember, as auditors, you might be more experienced in some of these areas and have more knowledge, so the auditee might not be as good in putting their thoughts into the words required. So you have to assume that what you're doing is making it the easiest for the auditee in giving you as much of the information as possible in an accurate manner, and in a manner in which they have not left out any critical information. So if there's more than one control weakness within a finding, break the finding out into subsections and have a response for each subsection. Have a control owner for each response, including subsections. Have an estimated realistic completion date for each response. Do not give, if you got an audit report, say at the December 31, do not give all the estimated closing date as March 30th for the following year, because some of the points might require the implementation of the system. It may require for management to include whatever it is that is going to close out that finding. They might have to get resources, which will include adjustments to the budget. And if the amounts have not been included in the current budget, then you will have to say to them that this is a later date. It will not be March 31, but the following year, June, because we are going to be implementing a system and we have to include that in the budget for the following year, or whatever the case is. So you have to consider budget, you have to consider availability of staff, and the availability of other resources. Maybe you might not even have the correct staff in the department at the time. The post may be empty for the person who is supposed to be the process owner of the area that finding is for. Do not commit to a date you know you will not be able to meet the timeline for, just to look good in the audit response, because you think that's gonna make the auditors feel good and be off your backs for another 3 months. No, because they will be back if you have not done that. So, but you will find that when you give an auditor a detailed response, telling them the date you expect it to be, the finding to be closed, and what you need to do to get that finding closed, for example, the implementation of a system, they will not come back before that time you have given them, because you have already told them that you have to implement a system first. They may come back to check in the same area on different things, but they will already know that you're going to implement a system to close out that particular finding. So what they might come back and do is check to see where you are with the implementation of the system. So that is the reason it is important for you to give a detailed response and let them know exactly what you are doing, and also give them the assurance that you are actually doing some work to get the finding closed out. If you don't even respond at all, they could come back assuming that, oh, you have closed out the findings, or they will just come back and audit to give them some assurance that whether the finding is closed or not. So if you have not responded, and when they come, you are not even trying your best to give them the right audience to give them the detailed updates on the findings, then they will come back before you're even ready for another audit. And that just makes the process more tedious. They could have gone on to audit another area rather than double auditing this area within the space of twice in a year or twice in 2 years, when they would normally review that area every other year. So it is always important for you to keep the auditors up to date with what you're doing. Also, if there's an error in the audit finding, do not ignore it. Ensure the auditor acknowledges the correction in writing and send your response to them in writing. So whatever the case is, do not ignore the audit points. Always ensure you respond in a professional manner. So everyone, these are my tips and my advice on how I think you should respond to audit findings, whether it's internal audit or external audit, based on my experience. If you have anything to add in addition, please let me know in the comments below. If you have any tips, extra tips, anything that you do, anything you agree with, anything you do not agree with, please put them in the findings below. If this has helped you in any way, let me know too, because that will encourage me to go on to do more of this sort of work. So this is my first video. I have an introduction video before this of who I am and what I do, and my experience and all of that. So thanks again for watching, and remember to like, subscribe, share and comment. And I also have my email address, so if you have any queries, if you would like me to assist in anything, please feel free to send me an email and I will make some time available. If you have an audit report that you need some one-on-one guidance in responding to those findings, I will make myself available and we can have an hour or 2 hours and we can go through and work on those. Please remember to like my videos, subscribe to the channel, and share the videos with your friends and colleagues. I will also be adding Patreon to my channel, where you'll be able to gain access to the resources which I have developed over the years. Thank you again for watching my videos, and I don't take it for granted, as I understand that your time is precious. Have a nice day, and thank you for subscribing to my channel, Yvonne Maragh, where we will deal with internal controls, risks, audits, and other finance matters. Thanks again for watching. Bye.